Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scouser's morning coffee or tea with American Scouser on a Monday morning. That's right. Grumpy is in the house. Kind of like I could have used a couple more hours of sleep, probably. Overall, just grumpy. And now I find out about McAllister possibility, even more grumpy. But thank God the prince is in the house. What's happened?
And I'm here to make you as least grumpy as possible, which is my job from day to day. I don't succeed very well, but I do what I can.
It's A for efforts. You just got to keep trying. That's all it takes. Serge is with us already. Good morning. So we'll talk about the game a little bit. We'll talk about the weekends. So this will be a kind of like a pre-match, if you will. We won't have any match day content today. But then I think starting next weekend, we're thinking of doing the entire shebang with the pre and the watch along and the post and everything like that. So because finally we'll have some weekend games, which will be nice. Because obviously the first game was on Friday. But so the that's probably, well, let's start with the news that McAllister did not travel with the squad possibly, and now I'm seeing it more and more and more. That really bites because my hope was at least have that midfield intact and have Saboslai as right back. So what do you think happens now?
Oh, it's difficult. What the hell were all our players doing exactly 9 months ago? I feel like everyone, Gravenberch had a kid, McAllister had a kid, Sobo had a, like everyone was just in the same timeline. Apparently, I don't know what it is, but I think ideally it would have been McAllister, Wirtz, Gravenberch with Sobo playing right back, as you mentioned. I think that would have been kind of our best case scenario, given who's available. If Bradley is, and if Slot feels like Bradley is ready enough, because Bradley is traveling with the team, then maybe he is the one that gets put in right back. And maybe Joe is ready to start and he comes off early. I don't know. I think it's still Sobo, and then we see Curtis fill in for McAllister. So we see Curtis, Gravenberch, and Wirtz in that midfield, which is a little worrying. I don't feel like there's enough bite in that midfield to go up against Newcastle's midfield. I think we talked about this last year. Newcastle's midfield is just, they're tough and they are a pain in the ass and they know it, right? And they do what they do on purpose, and they're physical, and they're frustrating. And I know that this is going to be a physical game. It's going to be an emotional game, I think, for both sides, given kind of the Isak drama, if you will, that there's going to be a little bit more bite to it. And my only worry is that our midfield really doesn't have a bite. Curtis Jones at times, but I don't think Wirtz, at least, and I don't want to see him get stuck into it this early on too. And then Gravenberch, he's not really like that either. So I think that'll just make us really thin as far as who can come in for those guys, which makes that even worse.
I think it's scary when your bite is McAllister, mind you, because he does play a lot bigger than his size. But I think that's probably normally Szoboszlai will give you some physicality there. But I really don't think after seeing, I mean, I guess the hope now is, yes, Bradley being able to play. I'm doubting that. Same for Gomez. So my scenario was like having McAllister, Gravenberch, and then Wirtz in front of him, and then Szoboszlai is right back. We're like, hey, problem solved. All four on the same at the same time. And I think that's the Jones. I mean, that's what Serzi has as well. Jones, Gravenberch, and Wirtz up in the middle, Sobo at right back. Yeah, that's slightly concerning in many ways. I mean, first of all, like we're now concerned about midfield. We totally forgot that we're going to play Szoboszlai as a right back, which could be an issue by itself. But yeah, that's not physical, especially this game. But I was going to ask you about that because I was on with Solo the other day on his show. I was in the chat, I should say, and like they were talking about the Newcastle players. I know the fans are going to be up for this. It's going to be quite the environment and stuff. But I don't think. Do you think the players, like Newcastle players, have any additional motivation for it aside from the one that might pass on from the fans? Because really, they actually know what's happening behind the scenes better than we do in terms of if something was promised to Isak already told them that, blah blah blah. So do the players have any additional motivation?
No, not intrinsically. I think what I was saying between more physical and emotional is that they'll feed off of the fans. Kind of what you're saying is that the fans will make it a very emotional, kind of nervous atmosphere. And the players, we've seen our own players feed off of that atmosphere at Anfield at times. So I think that is what I'm thinking, that it's going to be more and more physical and emotional because the fans are going to bring them into that. Not necessarily that they have more stock in it, because I don't think they care enough. I would think that they're over all of this at this point, and they just want to get past it, whichever direction it is.
Yeah.
So they're playing on the field with who they have. They're not worrying about who they might not have or who they might still have. They're worrying about who is on the field. So I think only from a perspective of the fans might push that onto the players and have them react in certain ways based on the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird deal. I'm sure. I mean, I think you're right too. They're probably like, when is this thing gonna be over? When is it gonna be 31st now? Because they probably have that calendar circled so that this thing can be over one way or the other. Because last year we talked about our players constantly being asked about the contracts and stuff like that, and that was gonna be the entire freaking year. So at least they could say, "Hey, whenever I'm asked this, here's how I'm gonna approach it." And with this Isak thing, it's constantly changing, but they only have to deal with it for one more week over here. Yeah, I don't know, man. I was already kind of like concerned about this game, even without this Isak saga and all that kind of stuff. Going away to St. James Park is always like a tough fixture, the physicality, the fans, and stuff like that. So, what is the key, you think? Do we just kind of hang in there for a little bit, make sure the fans kind of like settle down a little bit, and then slowly control the game, or kind of go at them right from the get-go and quiet them down that way?
I think more of the latter. I think you need to stuck out the emotion as soon as possible. If you can get an early goal in within first 10, 15 minutes, quiet that crowd, I think that's going to be huge for the rest of the game. Now, we saw last year, it doesn't matter if we do go up anyway, because there's there's always a hint of capitulation. And we saw what happened against Bournemouth last week. So it's not like we're a steel trap at the back as well, especially if we're going to play a makeshift back four with a midfielder playing as a right back. It's going to leave some holes. And I think the best way to do that is if you get on the front foot, if your attacking force is able to then put the pressure onto the team and not the other way around, where the pressure is on you and you have to respond that way. So I think for your question is get an early goal in, quiet the crowd, control the game as best as you can, and maybe not be so high tempo, back and forth basketball style, but really try and control the ball as best as you can. The problem is that without Mac Allister, Curtis he's tidy on the ball, right? But he can over dribble. Gravenberch has a cute little spin, but he's not necessarily the best at holding possession. And then you have Wirtz, who is still probably trying to make an impact and won't want to just hold the ball as much. So you don't have a lot of hold up in that midfield today. I mean, that's just guessing who was in there, right? So that's my one worry, is that even when we do try and control it, there isn't someone who can really control it in that midfield. And this game is going to be won and lost in the midfield between both sides.
And that's unfortunate that there's not going to be Mac Allister there in that midfield, because I always talk about him as like almost like the point guard. Like he knows when to kind of like, let's go. And then he knows when to like kind of like pull back and like, okay, now we're going to have a little bit of possession for like 30 seconds over here and stuff like that. And I don't see Jones, as much as he tries, when he tries to slow things down, I think that's when he gets caught on the ball, because his natural inclination is like just to get going with it. So when he's holding it, he's almost like over dribbling it a little bit and stuff. That's when that happens. I mean, Gravenberch is fine, and Wirtz is like too attacking minded. I mean, this is going to be, and really unfairly, like you said, I think it was like maybe the galley or somebody was not even like starting him this game because of like the physicality of it and stuff like that. I can't remember who it was, but or maybe it was like in the chats in that show. I can't remember. All these things are blending in my head over this last week. Last week was rough. But do you? It feels like it's gonna be a lot on him today in terms of helping that midfield, and also doing his regular thing in attacking after last week, or is that putting just too much more and more pressure on this guy?
I feel like the pressure that's there isn't going to be more or less than what's already there. I think him being the local lad at the club now, I think that weight gets put on him, and I think he understands that. I think he realizes that. So I don't think there's necessarily going to be more or less pressure. I just think there's going to be more or less overreaction from our fan base, depending on how things go. That's the thing I'm sort of always worried about is what's going to be the overreaction of today, right? What's going to be the overreaction of the next game?
Yeah.
It's just it feels like it builds, and we always have to have some sort of scapegoat in our team for whatever reason. And Curtis seems to be the oddball out right now, and I don't necessarily know all the way why. A couple of years ago, I could understand. I think Gally's mentioned this before. I've mentioned this before. I wasn't as high on him. I remember I made comments saying, well, if he wasn't local, like we wouldn't really care that much about him, because I truly felt that way a couple of years ago. And I think he's really grown out of that, and I really respect him as a footballer. And now I feel like now I'm trying to overly defend him to other people who are now saying the same thing I did a couple of years ago, because time is just a fucking circle. So I think pressure-wise, there's not going to be, like I said, any more, any less than what's there already, because I think there is plenty of pressure. It's just going to be a matter of how he's able to play within himself and still feel like a key component to the team, because he absolutely is. We talked about it. You need fourth and fifth choice guys that know that they're fourth and fifth choice guys, that when needed, they step up and they do what they need to do. And I think he's a perfect example of that.
That's not a bad scenario either. I guess Jones at right back. I feel like Jones at right back would be a bit more responsible than Szoboszlai at right back, but I think you lose a little bit on pace and physicality against the winger. That's not the only downfall of that. But I think Jones would play a bit smarter in that position. I can see Szoboszlai being out in the middle of nowhere suddenly. And that actually like brings me back to the left side as well. Because you're going to have this on the right hand side, how does that affect the left hand side, and who do you play there? Do you put Kirkes, who's going to run up and down, or do you play it a bit more safer, knowing you don't actually have a right back? Of course, this is all assuming that, like Bradley or Gomez is not ready to go, but from all indications on, what was that, Thursday, that they would probably not be. But who do you start at left back in this match? It feels like everybody's going with Kirkes because he's the the new item on the menu, if you will. But it just feels like a game like this, I don't know if you use Robertson's experience and the fact that he might sit back and control a bit more.
Oh man, this one's tough. I would lean toward Robbo for this game because of, like you said, experience. I think there is a lot of emotion at play still. I think for someone like Kirkes, I think he knows that he probably hasn't had his best games recently, and there's always going to be that sense of wanting to prove yourself at this club. A guy who was voted by the players as the best left back in the league last year, and to have a really subpar debut at home, I mean, that can get to you. And as much as I respect his speed and his physicality, I think someone like Robertson today, you need someone back there with Verge that is just more level-headed and not going too rash into tackles, because this is a game that can quickly turn. If you make one or two bad tackles, you really flip that game. And so I think this is a spot for Robertson, as far as the veteran composure that he has. I know he's lost a step or two, but he still has enough quality to put in a good 60, 65 against a team like this, where yes, their wingers are dangerous, but they don't really have anyone through the middle we have to worry about. So it really comes down to being able to, if he can keep up with whoever is on that right side with him, or left side in our case, then that's that.
Yeah, I think so too. It makes a little bit more sense, I think. Dara says Jones looks shaky at best at right back. It's a gamble. The way slutzing and shit making change before Costas. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see an alternative, to be honest with you. Like I say, Szoboszlai will give you more speed and pace, but I just do think, Jones would play the position a bit more responsibly overall. And I think the the positive of is, or what you're gauging is, who do you want in midfield more, as opposed to who do you want in right back more. I don't know which way Slot is going to decide. Like, who do I want to right back more? Who do I want in middle more? And if you don't have
Good
Mac
question.
Allister, I think you do want Szoboszlai in midfield more. Sir Z says the Greek Scouser.
The Greek
Why do you-
Scouser is in Rome right now. Not him specifically, but I know that I think Roma, they're looking to iron out some details for a loan, I believe, for this year.
Let's hope it's a loan with an option to buy, because I know they were. I mean, even Slot mentioned in the press conference, and I thought that was kind of like a dig at like getting rid of one of these left backs, kind of a deal. But he said, I mean, he said like, we're not gonna have like 3-4 right backs or something like that. He said, but then he kind of said, well, we do have 3 left backs, I guess, kind of a thing, but not for long. Yes, so Serzi will be proven wrong, hopefully, and we will not have 3 left backs going into the season. Gakpo, I don't think you have a lot of options over there, because it's not like Rio is going to be any more physical over there. I mean, let's talk about that. The front 3, more like Wirtz. That's actually what I was more asking you about, in terms of how much pressure there will be on Wirtz in terms of after the first match. Now with this midfield, he has to play a bigger role. How much pressure is on that guy to kind of be the man this game, if you will, and say, this is what we paid the big bucks for?
I think the pressure's there. I mean, you pay 125 million for a guy that is a generational talent, that is one of the best midfielders in the world. You want him to go out there and be one of the best midfielders in the world. You need him to be the best midfielder on the pitch week in, week out, for that kind of money and for the talent that he has. Now, there is still something to be said about the pieces around him. And you can only be as good as you fit in with the pieces around you. And while there are a lot of good pieces around him, that I think the club has excellent players at each position, there still needs to be a time to bet in. And I think this is the rebuilding year that we were kind of worried about last year, where we won't really see these guys at full tilt probably until maybe late September, early October, because you have the international break coming up as well. That's going to take out a couple, 2 weeks almost of being able to train and being able to get used to everyone in the squad too. If we get 2 more signings in by the end of the window, they're only going to be in for about 10 days before the international break. So you have that to catch up on too. So I think what I'm worried about is that this is going to be sort of like a sputtering car, a sputtering sports car, right? Like we know that the body's there, it looks good, it's going to be fast, it's going to look nice, but it might take a couple of turns of the engine before it gets going. And I think that's where we're at right now.
Look at you with the race car analogy. Damn. We'll surprise the world tonight. I hope so. And yes, if you have any volunteers who understand math, numbers, and stuff, we are still looking for somebody to explain what XG is actually to Kazi. So he kind of like understands the concept over there. There was a huge argument. If you're on the Discord, this is why you should be on Discord, in terms of what XG is, what it means, do numbers mean anything, kind of deal. And even as an old fart like me, who I don't like the numbers overall, the numbers game, if you will. And I think sometimes people might look at a game and a number and kind of like blow it up. I realized, like, I knew what Kazi was saying overall in terms of like the eye test, some of the stuff you see, you don't need numbers to tell you certain things. We always talk about that in basketball, actually, because it's more of a stat game, that, the stuff that doesn't show up in stats, kind of a deal, right? Yeah. So I feel like, yes, this sport has just as much, if not more, of those things, but there's a reason why the big boys with $1 billion are looking at 100 different numbers before they spend it, because in the big, it does paint a good big picture on players and stuff like that, if you look at it like a proper sample size. But we are looking for somebody to explain all this to Kazi when they have some time, hopefully.
Did Kazi, I don't know, did anyone watch the goals that Coventry City scored?
I have not, obviously, no.
Yeah. Okay. Because a lot of them were kind of fluky. So that's why the XG was so low. It's not that hard to understand. XG is the expected goals that you are to have in a single match. Every shot has a certain statistical chance of going in. That's all it is. And statistically, the goals that went in for Coventry City yesterday were statistically not as probable, hence the low XG. They just happened to finish. It's exactly what happened with when we scored 7 against United. I think our XG was like 2.2, something
Yes,
like
I
that.
remember that. Yep.
Because statistically, those some of those shots, the probability of them going in were not very high, and they're not as likely as other goals that you've seen. So.
Yes, good luck. I think ever since I did introduce him to there's a girl bands. There we go. XG is a Japanese girl group. Ever since I mentioned that, we never heard back from Kazi, if you noticed that day, because he was just listening to nonstop XG, the Japanese girl group. Gene says, no, Robo has no pace, will be against fast runners. Don't do that to him. And that's the only thing, right? The difference now is the pace, but I almost worry, okay, who is more likely to get a yellow in a game like this early on? And that's what I worry about. It's going to be really tense in there already. And the ref is going to look to calm things down, at least on the pitch. And usually you do that with an early yellow or, call every ticky-tacky foul so that, you kind of set the tone for the game kind of a deal. And I feel like, your biggest candidate to get that yellow would be Kirkaz, just because of how he goes into tackles.
Yes. Kirkaz or the stupid, silly Gravenberch yellow. Like, I feel like every 4 or 5 games or so, he just has a really bad idea of a tackle. Especially that red against Palace at the end of the year last year.
Yeah.
Just kind of just forgets what he's doing or forgets what he's playing and just loses the plot. So I think that's why I think emotionally for me, Kirkaz wouldn't be the ideal left back going into today. Because of all the factors at play. And like you're saying too, I think he is the most likely to change the tone of the game negatively because of having to then not play within himself anymore. And I think that's not what you want to see.
Yeah, Jones, Robo all day for the first yellow. I think, if he's playing right back and stuff, yeah, but I'm talking about like the first 5-10 minutes where it's being set. The scene is being set by the ref kind of a thing. I can kind of see that happening based on how the environment is going to be overall. Dara says, wish we kept Kwanzaa. He got his goal. Afterwards, they lost still, but that's a different story. I didn't watch like the highlights or whatever. I just saw like the final score at the end of the day kind of a deal. But we lost against Forest was like Kentako Langa last season. If you remember, like he kind of like got beat by Saka, or like in that Arsenal game as well. Robo got beat pretty bad over there. So I know it's not the same old Robertson, but I think the experience can be handy in a game like this, as opposed to throwing Kirkaz to wolves. And I think we talked about this on a Monday night podcast, I think before, with like Gally and stuff, or it was like last Friday morning. Actually, I think we were talking about how it's a more of an impact to bring a guy like Kirkaz off the bench as opposed to bring a guy like Robertson off the bench. We used to talk about this with like Nunez and stuff, like, coming off the bench and all that kind of stuff. So, and yeah, Gravenberch, I know what you mean. To be fair to him, the red he saw in the Palace game, he forgot he was center back. I think that's what I take that as, because that's something he does in front of the box to stop a counter, take one for the team kind of thing. It was like, oh shit, I'm the last guy now, kind of like a foul.
Which this year doesn't matter if you're the last guy or not. You can bat the ball away with your hand. The rules change all the time.
This weekend again, and I did not watch a lot of games. I watched the United game as I was like doing stuff, and I was chatting to my brother at the same time. So I was on my like left screen, and I was like playing a game and stuff like that at the same time. But like some of the calls in that game alone, like the penalty that's given, then the goal that's given, which are like kind of like what the hell is going on, is mind-boggling. Some of the calls that's going on in this league. I think you put a link of. And that was like in championship, so at least they didn't have the benefit of the VAR, I guess, right? Yeah. But I mean, you have VAR. When VAR has to look for like 2 minutes, literally they looked at that thing for 2 minutes, then it's not clear and obvious. And the thing that scares me is when you have a system like this, if this is what you're going to look at, it feels like you can impact scores so freaking easily from that VAR booth, or as like the refereeing, because you can just, that happens all the time. So if you're not going to call some of them but call the other ones, you can really dictate which way a game is going to go by just happen to be watching that. Like, how did they miss the guy literally pushing with two hands before he scores the goal, Euro? But then the other side, shit that happens all the time, really, and the ball is actually going over them anyway. But which I can understand, the first one is a penalty, but then the second one should be a foul. Dude, is unfreaking believable.
Yeah, it's consistency is the biggest problem. We're going to talk about consistency all day long till we're right in the face about refereeing and VAR calls, because that's exactly all that it is. The Bassi penalty, it is a penalty. I mean, he's taking Mount and he's throwing him over his hip. Like, it's a pretty great judo throw, honestly.
It is
Like,
actually, yes.
yeah,
I thought
like
that's
its technique is perfect on that. But then when you look, Shaw is bringing down whoever the Fulham player was behind him. I don't remember who it was, but Shaw is bringing him down right behind that. So if anything, it should cancel out. And then you have Euro, who is gaining an advantage. I understand that if, I think Goldbridge was saying something about, oh, well, that the pushing happens in the box all the time, you're never going to call that. Yeah, but when it results in you gaining an advantage in putting the ball into the net, then there should be something called, because then that's the whole point of VAR, so that players don't get an advantage by doing something illegal. That's something that they shouldn't do, and then they get an advantage off that. And by pushing someone in the back to create space, and unfortunately, if Muniz isn't there, the ball goes wide because the header was trash.
Yes.
It just happened to deflect off Muniz's back and go in. But how you can look at that and say, no, he didn't gain any advantage, this is just normal. It blows my mind.
Yeah, because I think it was Bassi again, and he could not even jump. I don't know if it's Bassi or
it was
Bassi, right? Again,
yeah.
And he couldn't even jump because, when you're pushing the back, obviously you can't jump. So yeah, it was very mind-boggling. I can't wait, because Edipal justified on Rival Bros. He was already trying to justify it to me. He was like, "Oh, then they would call anything." Okay, well then, how are they not calling this then? It was just like, dude, do you not see this double standard over here? I always call United the Galatasaray of the Premier League, where they get some like ridiculous calls, always somehow go their way, because there's so many Manchester refs and stuff like that. And he always thinks of Manchester United as like the Fenerbahce and stuff. So we'll have a great conversation this Thursday, I'm sure, about that. And I can't wait for him to kind of twist and turn until like it fits the narrative. But from the weekend, obviously we did the watch along. You bailed on us at halftime, but we did do the watch along for the City Spurs game. There's like that Chelsea game, Arsenal trash leads. What do you take away from the weekend?
I think someone mentioned something about Arsenal having a great result this weekend and kind of worrying them. It's Leeds. They're meant to go down, right? And I don't think we look at that game and go, wow, Arsenal really are title contenders, like really title contenders, because they beat a relegation side exactly how they're supposed to beat a relegation side. And now Saka's out for 3 to 4 weeks. I think he's going to miss next week. Odegaard, I think he'll probably be back. I think that it was just more precautionary than anything. And so and from the weekend overall, I watched the Brighton Everton game. It was okay. It was kind of fun. It was a little back and forth. I will say the stadium was a little bit quieter than I expected it to be. It was really loud at the beginning, and then it sort of just petered off as you watch. So some things just don't change. But it was one of those things where I'm not sure how the middle of the table is going to look at all this year. I think that's what I'm getting from this past weekend, is that there's going to be a lot of yo-yoing between like 5th and 13th. I don't think there's a whole lot of teams that are going to set themselves apart from the middle of the pack as much as we typically might see. And I don't know if Chelsea or City are the title contenders that we thought they were before the season started. Again, it's early. It's all we do as sports fans is overreact. And so that is my take from this weekend, is that There isn't a single team, especially us, that I look at and go, wow, they're for real. I think there are problems and holes in every team, and I think it might set up an exciting title race.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's going to be like that, like you say, early on. And there's a lot of players out there with their minds all over the place right now. This is why I'm not a huge fan of, having the window stop after the season starts, basically, because now there's still a ton of transfers and there'll be a lot happening this week over the next 6 days over here. And I think there are a lot of players over there wondering if they're going to play next week, if they're going to play here next week, if they're going to start next week. So there's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts out there. But yeah, there is a lot of, Gally refers to it as mediocre ones. I think like middle of the table, yeah, there's a lot of teams where you would not be shocked if they finish in the middle somewhere. So I get that. I definitely get that in terms of like watching these games. And I think that's why the initial weeks are kind of like fun, because you're not like watching a specific theme, like, oh, this team is gonna hang on for dear life, and then that's what I'm watching, kind of a deal. The West Ham game, for example, I watched that for the most part. Started out like, I mean, West Ham looks really, really poor. And I don't like, they better get a couple of people in there because they do look really poor. But Latif Turan says, they'll throw the kitchen sink to us from the moment whistle blows. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. This is like an early. Sorzi says, tough game for us today, and we could already be behind them going into next week's game. It's match day 2. I think, it's very clear that if anything, I thought last week's game when Arsenal won was kind of, set piece FC won them 3 points. And I think that's basically but that was more concerning for me, because going to Old Trafford, even though it is United, it's still a tough place to go to and stuff like that. So for them to come out of there with that freaking 3 points on a lame, like set piece goal is actually more concerning than, like you're saying, like trashing Leeds at home. It's like, okay, that's fine. Like that doesn't tell me anything. Last week didn't tell me anything aside from the fact that they're still going to like save their ass a lot from set pieces. Even this week, the first goal again came from a set piece. That's the one that opened the floodgates and stuff. And I think that's one thing they have going for them, where they can struggle, not be able to create anything, and set pieces sometimes save them. But we've seen it last season when the set piece did not save them. They had a lot of luck draws, and they had like a lot of games where they could not score or concede one and lose 1-0 and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of like too early to kind of like tell that. What do you make of this? I can't wait. I know Edip is already fuming, but what do you make of that penalty kick thing with Mr. Rats himself? I mean, and what I didn't get even more is the studio in NBC trying to almost justify his childish behavior. Dude, this is not like, somebody like, people have routines. I get that. But he did restart his routine. It wasn't like, he was taking a free throw and somebody put their hand in the front in the last second. It was like, oh, damn, you threw me off. And I just like missed it, kind of thing. He did the whole freaking spiel again. And for him to make such a big stink out of it is, God, like, how is a guy like that a captain? That's why I think it was like Paul saying, they spent 200 million, but you can get all the strikers you want. It doesn't matter when you have no midfield, number one. And two, this is the guy who's leading the gang.
When your captain is a petulant child, it's not like the ref forced him to go from that moment, and he had the time to reset. He took the penalty differently than he has ever taken penalties before. He does that little stupid, like, slow walk up with the little hop, and then he hits it on the ground, bottom left or right corner. He never hits it with power like that. It's the one thing that I've, at least from what I gathered from Manchester United fans, were like, why was he even taking it that way? It doesn't matter. Like, forget about what happened before. Why is he changing the way that he's taking the penalty anyway? Why doesn't he do it the way that he always does it? I saw a lot of comments telling him to fuck off to Saudi, hoping that, a bid comes back in. And I mean, if that's how you're feeling about your captain, it's a pretty big statement to make. Because I know there were times that we were frustrated with Van Dijk, we weren't sitting there going, God, El Etihad, please come in. Give us 50 million for Van Dijk and take him off our hands. Like, no, because when your captain is an actual captain and he's not a petulant child and he's a leader and someone who you like, who you need on the pitch, you don't feel that way. So yeah, I think it's comical that he would blame the referee for his miss. When you're at that level, that professional level, you can't even get the ball on target from a penalty. It's not anyone's fault but your own. If it was saved, whatever. But he didn't even get it. It landed 14 rows up. It looked like he hated someone in a certain row and just went after them.
Hit him right on the head. Yeah, I mean, it was a brutal penalty, and it kind of served right just because of what was given after 3 minutes of VAR watching and stuff like that. So it was kind of like justice served, but I mean, it was the way he made like a whole scene out of that was unbelievable. Yeah, I did hear the Saka thing. I mean, the thing with hamstrings is, I like the kid and everything, but that's like, you can't bring him back early. It might be a scenario where he comes back and then right back again, because I think it happened to him last year too when they tried to bring him back and then he went away again for even longer. So yeah, like Jimbo says, we know he'll be rushed back, and that's one thing with the hamstring that you don't want to do. So but they did get Eze in there, which kind of like worries me. There's room today that they might be going after that center back. It almost felt like we started this transfer window riding hot, and then now it's kind of like the flame is almost out over there. Do you think they finish it up strong? I just feel like it is so, and I've been saying this for like a couple of weeks now, it is so reckless and irresponsible to do all the moves that you did but not do some obvious ones. I know Slot's still saying, oh, we technically have still like 6 attackers and stuff like that, but you don't. You counting like wrong people in there if you're counting Rio and Frimpong and stuff like that. And then obviously you still need center back. These are the days is right, Ryan. What's going on, man?
Yeah, especially when you consider the players that were sold were players that there was a necessity for that position already. It really makes you scratch your head and go, man, I understand the value was there for some of those sales, right? 70 million for Luis Diaz at his age with his contract. That's a great deal as far as what you're getting into the club. Because if you don't make that sale this summer, what do you end up with? Maybe a 20 million sale next year. Maybe he just ends up going for free. So then you kind of think about, all right, what is the advantage of 70 million now as opposed to, losing that 50 million? Is the amount of money that we can make be with him in the squad worth that amount? I think that's the stuff that we don't always think about, that their number crunching is going, okay, if this player is in the squad and they're able to contribute this much and get us to position ABC in the league and get us to round ABC in the Champions League, what is that money compared to the money that we would get for him if we're selling him right now? Yeah. And if that difference makes more sense to sell, they're going to sell, because that's the numbers game that they play. The problem now is that when you play that numbers game and you're thin, it doesn't matter what spot you are in the table, where you finish, if you don't have players to get you there. And that's where we're at now, is that we're lacking that depth. If Gakpo goes down with an injury today, what happens on the left side? Is it going to be Rio? There's no way. Is it going to be Chiesa? Probably not. So it's like you said, it's a little bit irresponsible, it feels like, to be selling players in positions that we already needed help in. And I hope that this last week has a couple surprises in it. Even if the surprise is, hey, Isak's finally in, Gahey's finally in.
Yeah.
Because at this point, it feels like it's going to be a surprise, because I have no effing clue what's going to happen there, because it's just so back and forth.
Well, Paul has some hot news coming out that, I mean, everybody's just laughing at Newcastle now, because here's the thing, you're out there, you're like, hey, does anybody have a striker? Like, so you're going around and there's money falling off your pockets, because, as you're walking around, because they know you're going to get ridiculous money one way or the other, when it was 110, 120, 130. 150. You're gonna get a lot of money for Isak. So obviously everybody's going to be like, you got money, man. Why don't you pay more? So that's the same thing with Visa. And here's the deal. Like, they are waiting a little too late now, because here's the thing: a team who's selling has to have, and all these teams obviously have like scouting departments and stuff, so they would have somebody to go to. If this happens, we can go over there and get that guy for like 25 or whatever. But it's ridiculous. I think that's everybody's increasing the price like crazy for it. It's like a Newcastle price has become like the manufacturer suggested retail price, where like actually nobody else pays that, but it's only for like Newcastle.
That's hilarious. That would be great. That's awesome.
It should be like a Newcastle price, your price.
It's the NSRP instead of the MSRP. Yeah.
Yeah, that's but they have to get somebody. Here's my thing: the fact that all the clubs are doing this and not taking advantage. Like, they got Larson for what, like 20, 25 or whatever we were talking about it the other day on the morning show. So they have to have a scenario where all these teams do know what's going to happen with Isak behind the scenes. Like, they do know that he is leaving. Otherwise, I don't think these guys would really roll the dice as much and keep increasing the price.
Right. Their hands are tied at this point. And it's the classic, hey, you want this guy, and we know you need this guy. This is the money that we want, and that's it. Because from Wolves' point of view, they could use Strand Larson this year too. It's not like they have to get rid of him. From a Brentford point of view, I guess they're okay without Wissa as well, right? Because if they're just kind of playing hardball with that, then they won't necessarily need to wait on that. So I feel like the strikers that they're after are not in a position that Isak is in, where they need to get out because they're no longer wanting to play at the club, and it's making it more difficult for them overall.
Yeah, at this point, I think it's going to come to a point where like we're not going to even care. Normally, I was like, I need them to get somebody so that we can go get Isak and finish the deal. I don't think we're there anymore. Like, doesn't matter if they don't get anybody at this point. I think like the Isak thing is not going to happen for him, is what it's looking like. But everybody's thinking, like Newcastle fans, which is why I understand like today is like like the battle for Isak and stuff like that. Not really. Like, Isak has nothing to do with this at the end of the day, because it's not like when they win, Isak is going to be like, oh shit, you guys are the better team, I'm staying, or anything like that. Like, he already wants out, and he wants out, sounds like, for a bunch of other reasons at this point. So does not really matter who, like, and I don't understand how you can call a guy a rat, and then if you win the game and he comes back, then you're going to welcome him with open arms and stuff like that. I don't understand what kind of thinking that is either. But British talk. See, I remember Asda. I don't know Wade Rose. Were they there in my back in the day, like 3 decades ago? I do not remember. I remember Asda though, for some reason, or maybe I've seen it somewhere else. But okay, let's head out with some early predictions over here. As a reminder, no match day content today, unfortunately, but we'll be back. It will be pretty much a couple of hours after the final whistle, but Monday night podcast tonight at 7 Central, 8 Eastern. So do tune in and join us then. What is your prediction for this game?
Oh boy. I'm gonna go with a draw. I know, boring. I'm gonna go 2-2. I think there's going to be some goals, and I think either side defensively not great still, and I think it's going to be really tight, and I think it's going to end up being 2-2, and I think that we're going to walk away from that. It's going to be a well-earned draw and not a we lost 2 points kind of draw, because I think that would sting a little bit more than kind of like last year, right, where you could have walked away with 3 and you gave away the chances when you shouldn't have. So I think it's going to be a hard fought 2-2. We walk away from it fine, and then just go and try and smash Arsenal next week.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that actually. Like, is it going to be a draw that we're like, whew, that was close, I'll take the point and get the hell out of here kind of a deal, or we're going to kind of bang our head on the wall? But a lot of optimism. That's what I like about this audience, damn it. 3-0.
3-0.
Tony is going with the 2-1. Bit of a dilemma. My Mrs. Family Newcastle fans, I'm saying 3-2. Yeah, 3-2 is not good on my heart, but I'll take it. 3 points would be huge. It would be similar to, I just want us to get like a win one way or the freaking other and run out of there with like 3 points, because that's a tough game to go to. And there is no, before anybody loses their head, I mean, I think if it's a draw away at St. James Park, it's not the worst result in the world. I understand what Sir Z is saying and stuff like that, but I mean, when I looked at these schedules, I even felt like even 5 points I would not lose my shit with. But that's why I was concerned about the Bournemouth game when it went down to a 2-2, because I was like, yeah, this has to be a 3 kind of an ordeal. So, but you never know, maybe it will be 9. So I know we both have stuff going on, so we do have to run a bit earlier than normal today. But do tune in tonight. Hopefully we'll be talking about 3 points and a win and some good stuff to add to that. It's going to be the day of Wirtz. I'm telling you, I have a feeling that today is going to be like, that's why you pay the big bucks kind of a deal. So let's hope with that. But have a great day, a great week, everybody, and we'll see you guys tonight. Take care.